Good morning and good evening to you all. When the Rotary Action Group for Peace endorsed the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the TPNW, Nimrata Suri organized the first formal event, a dinner and speech by Dr. Ira Helfand in Delhi in March of 2018. Well, for today's event, she requested that I name the names of the Rotarians, Rotary Peace Fellows, and Rotaract that have been involved in the campaign to get a resolution passed in the Council on Resolutions for Rotary to endorse the TPNW. I have failed to come up with such a list for a single reason. There are just too many to list. Some took actions that might have taken 15 minutes that made a critical difference. Some spent 12 hours a day. All are counted in moving Rotary into taking the second step in nuclear weapons abolition, the endorsement of the TPNW. Its first step was the divestment of its funds. So having divested of funds from nuclear weapons, getting out of all investments in nuclear weapons, all our Rotary funding will do good twice. Now the second step is for Rotary to endorse the TPNW and engage national leaders exactly as it has been able to engage national leaders and abolish polio from the planet. But there is one person without whom this would have never happened, Helen Peacock. Her PowerPoint presentation, World Peace, Pipe Dream or Possibility, Can Rotary Be a Tipping Point for World Peace, went viral. She has made the case that not only is Rotary political, brilliantly political, but what that means is nonpartisan. And in doing so, she has made the case that Rotary should endorse the TPNW regardless of the outcome of vote. She wrote the resolution that was submitted by 3 districts and is now on the core ballot. She networked with others to identify the core representatives who could make the key difference and made the strategy for educating the other representatives. When we write the history books, we will say Helen Peacock, Peace Chair, Rotary Club of Collingwood, South Georgian Bay, Ontario, Canada, was a key mover behind the seismic shift to engage Rotary in the overarching problems of the world, the first of which to be remedied was to abolish nuclear weapons. I give you Exhibit A, that one person can make a difference. Let us do a toast to Helen Peacock.
Cheers, cheers.
Can you put the spotlight on her? There she is. Helen, thank you so much. You truly are making a difference.
Thank you, Anne. Surprise, surprise, I am going to talk about nuclear weapons and the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. I just take a moment to share a screen. And I'm actually wanting to talk about leadership as well. Antonio Guterres, before Russia invaded Ukraine, called for an avalanche of action in 2022. We were facing global challenges, any one of which would have been enough for the UN Secretary General, but we were facing many, coming out of the pandemic and the health crisis around that, recognizing the urgency around global warming and what we had to do around that. And then Russia invaded Ukraine. And now the attention of the world has gone to war. I've recently become involved with a group, and you can tell I'm borrowing some of their slides, who are looking for ways to support Antonio Guterres in his call for an avalanche of action. These leaders have ties to the UN at every level and are aware of the bureaucracy and inertia that can prevent some of our enlightened leaders from actually helping us out of the crisis that we're facing today. And what they are saying is that, in fact, the decisions and the choices that our world leaders are making today, even the very words that they are choosing to use, are going to take us in one direction or the other. And if we want to be doing everything in our power for our mutually assured survival, we must. So what do I think needs to happen? First, we need a fundamental shift in world thinking. And second, I believe that Rotarians already have a higher peace consciousness than the average person on the street. We think about peace, we value peace. And I believe this is a call more than ever for Rotarians to lead. I believe that we could make an incredible difference. So let's look first at the shift in thinking that has to happen for all of us. Back in 1945, when the United Nations was formed and the hope and the possibility and the promise of the United Nations began, their goal was to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. That was the goal. And the very first resolution that they passed, resolution number 1, called for the elimination of nuclear weapons. And at the same time, UNESCO was being formed to promote peace and security, not through the barrel of a gun, but through education and arts and sciences and cultures, because they knew that wars don't begin because of a dispute over a boundary. Wars begin in the minds of men and women, and therefore it is in the minds of men and women that the defenses of peace must be constructed. Now, this was 75 years ago. This was the vision. And so I ask you now, how do you think we are doing? And it's a bit of a rhetorical question, isn't it? Because we're all going to say, not very well, not very well. We're watching the Ukraine tragedy unfold before our eyes. There are Rotarians in Ukraine for 3 weeks in a row. On Monday afternoon, we were talking with fellow Rotarians who were telling us that they could actually hear the sounds of war as they talked with us. And the headlines are catastrophic. And we've even, for the first time in our lifetime anyway, publicly heard a world leader threaten to use nuclear weapons. And it's not just the Ukraine tragedy. Just a few months ago, we were watching the Afghanistan tragedy unfold with people so desperate that they would cling to the undercarriage of an airplane and then plunge to their death when the airplane took off. And in the meantime, the United Nations calls the Yemen tragedy the largest humanitarian disaster in its history. And it just continues on in the background unabated. So really, it's tragedy after tragedy. And those of you who have heard me speak before know that there have been 250 wars since World War II, with hundreds of millions of people affected, catastrophic damage to the environment, trillions of dollars going into it. How did this happen? How did we go from saving succeeding generations from the scourge of war to this? And in my opinion, it happened because we never believed the vision in the first place. And I'll prove it to you. At the same time as the United Nations was being formed, the countries of the world were getting together to create the Geneva Conventions, the laws of war, the rules of what you can and can't be done in armed conflict. And when I say the nations of the world, 196 states have endorsed the laws of war. There's only a handful of United Nations treaties that have that level of support. So you see what I'm saying? On the one hand, we're going to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. But on the other hand, here are the laws of war. Here's what you can and cannot do. We have legitimized war. We never had a hope, not a sliver of a hope, not a glimmer of a hope to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. Let me put it to you this way. We all agree slavery is bad. But did we create humanitarian laws for slavery? Did we say slavery is bad, we don't want you to do it, but if you give your slaves a day off a week, and if you limit their workday to only 10 hours, and if you give them freedom of choice to their religion, then it's okay. No, we did not do that. We eliminated slavery. We made slavery illegal. And we have to do the same thing with war. We have changed so much. The world today doesn't even remotely resemble the world in 1945, not even remotely. We have international courts of law and a court of justice. We have international development in the World Bank. We understand the power of nonviolence, that it's twice as likely to succeed and without the death and destruction of violent resistance. We've seen the examples of Gandhi and Martin Luther King. We can get a PhD in conflict resolution. We understand various ways of approaching negotiation that are win-win or needs-based. We've had the women's movement. We've had the internet and the explosion of information and communication. It's a completely different world today. Wouldn't you agree, than it was 75 years ago? We have progressed in so many ways, and yet we remain locked in a World War II mentality when it comes to war. There is nothing different in our minds today than were in our minds 75 years ago when it comes to war. Whether we say it or not, we still believe security comes from the barrel of a gun. Whether we say it or not, we accept the military mantra that we hear from our military leaders. If you want peace, plan for war. Build up your military, make it as strong as possible, just in case, possibly, perhaps, maybe, we are invaded. And our leaders' response to the tragedy in Ukraine, what I am hearing a lot of is more militarism. Russia invaded Ukraine, and therefore we, every country in the world, has to bulk up their military. We have to achieve that target that the United States has set for us of 2% of our GDP. That's what I'm hearing mainly. I'm not hearing a whole lot about diplomacy and reconciliation. I'm not hearing a whole lot of appreciation of the fact that it was this very militarism, this very mindset that brought us to this point in the first place. Another way of looking at it is this. A lot of research has been done on factors that might correlate to war. There's only one. Wars are made by cultures that celebrate or tolerate war. Our thinking is reflected in our culture. Our culture is reflected in our thinking. So let's talk about this for a sec. Most of the people in this audience are Canadian, and we're proud that we are one of the 10 most peaceful countries in the world, according to the Institute of Economics and Peace. So is Canada, peaceful Canada, a culture that tolerates war? Well, we host CanSec every year, the largest trade show in North America for the military. We do this in Ottawa, Canada, our capital. 55 delegations come from around the world to buy fighter jets and tanks and machine guns and ammunition. We don't just participate in the international arms trade, we facilitate the international arms trade. We've been called out by Amnesty International because we continue to supply armaments to Saudi Arabia, and our position with regard to nuclear weapons has zero integrity. In spite of the fact that the people of Canada and the cities of Canada want us to endorse the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the government of Canada does not. So, question, do you think Canadian culture tolerates war? And if you think Canadian culture tolerates war, look at the culture of the other 996 countries in the world who aren't in one of the top most peaceful categories. Think of the culture of our neighbor to the south. So what needs to happen? We have to have this fundamental shift in thinking. We have to recognize that war itself is illegal. We have to stop tolerating war. Tolerating war. The group that I referred to earlier has laid out a kind of a template for what could happen if we had global cooperation around this. We could arrange and agree to 10% military reductions every year over a period of time, and that money going directly into human needs and our climate. So now let's look at what has to happen within Rotary, or what I invite us to make happen within Rotary. Because as I said before, we do have a higher peace consciousness than the average person, which means, I believe, that we are called to lead at this pivotal time on the planet. So let me start with this question. Do you think Rotary culture tolerates war? What do you think? And you're probably thinking, my goodness, peace is a foundational value in Rotary. Everything we do is founded on peace. We study peace. We understand peace. We've partnered with the Institute of Economics and Peace. We are proud that our 7 areas of focus correspond to the pillars of positive peace. We know that we are building positive peace with our international efforts and our efforts at home. We know that. But I ask you this, if we focus only on positive peace, if we don't also work for actual peace, the absence of war, if we don't even use the word war in Rotary peace circles, if we remain unaware, blissfully unaware of the attitudes and the institutions and structures that are allowing war to continue, doesn't that make us a culture that tolerates war? Or we can look at it this way. I have been to dozens of international conferences and local peace conferences within Rotary. Wonderful conferences, always inspiring. And typically they start with the question, what is peace to you? What is peace to you? And typically the answers are, peace to me is that I can walk because I've been given a prosthetic leg. Or peace to me is knowing that my children can go to school. Nobody ever says, peace to me is knowing that when I go to sleep tonight, a bomb isn't going to land on my house and murder me, or worse, murder my family. Nobody says that. And in fact, what we are saying in these conferences, and I'm quoting this woman, but it could be any conference, what we say is, instead of simply trying to stop direct violence, as if that were somehow beneath us or a Band-Aid, instead of simply trying to stop direct violence, we focus on positive peace and on building positive peace. And I agree that we should be proud that we focus on building positive peace. And I agree that Canadians should be proud that we're one of the 10 most peaceful countries in the world. But I don't think it's enough. Let me introduce you to Baria, Hisham, and their 2 children, Cedra and Judy. This is a Syrian family that my family helped sponsor to come to Canada, and we're all together there in our backyard. And one night, after the kids had gone to bed, we talked about the journey that Baria and Hisham made to get out of Syria. And Hisham told us that for months, he had been telling Baria they had to leave, we have to leave. And she had said, no, I can't leave, I can't leave. My parents, my brothers and sisters, my nieces and nephews, my aunts, I can't leave. And then one day, the bombs fell beside their house. And in the middle of the night, the entire family ran down to the basement and were cowering under the stairwell of the stairs going into the basement. And Hisham was spreading his body on top of his wife and daughters to give them another layer of protection. And he begs Baria, please let me try to save our daughters. And she nods her head. And when the bombs stopped falling, they went out on the street, and in some kind of miracle, their car still worked. And they got in their car with nothing, with just the shirts on their back. And they drove around the debris and the wreckage out of Damascus on a journey that would ultimately lead them to Oakville, Ontario, Canada. Now, if you ask Baria and Hisham and Cedra and Judy what peace means to them, they're going to tell you that it means that we are safe. We can go to sleep at night and know the bombs aren't going to fall. And this is a picture of their street that was sent to them after they arrived in Canada. So I ask you, by focusing only on positive peace, do you think Rotary culture tolerates war? And if yes, do you think that Rotary should work for actual peace as well as positive peace? Let me explain what I mean by tolerating war. Let's look at these balance scales and let's put the money that's going into militarism on the right, the money that's going into peace on the left, and let's use numbers from the Institute of Economics and Peace, our partner, because we can trust them. And this is what they tell us. 80 billion going into peace, that's a lot of money. But 5.9 trillion going into militarism. And they're not talking about violence here, the cost of violence. They're talking about the portion of the cost of violence attributable to militarism. And I'm going to add in the Rotary Foundation grants because I think they're significant and they may not already be counted in the worldwide humanitarian effort. So where does that bring us? 80 billion for peace, 5.9 trillion for militarism. Think about that. Take that in. Now, I have a degree in math and physics, but you don't have to have a degree in math and physics to understand which way these scales are going. When you spend $74 on militarism for every dollar that's going to peace, there's only one way to go. This is what's happening. And it isn't rocket science to understand that the only way that we are going to be able to change that is by getting some of this money shifted away from militarism and toward peace. And the only way we're going to be able to make that happen is by committing to stop tolerating war. So what do I think must happen? I think we in Rotary, with our higher peace consciousness, need to lead the way, need to live up to our potential. I believe that we should work to build positive peace and end war, that we should focus in everything we do on our mutually assured survival, and that the first step, concrete step that we can do, doable step, is to endorse the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. We have to do everything in our power to protect the pale blue dot. We do. So let's start looking at limiting beliefs, favorite limiting beliefs that stop us in our tracks and prevent us from doing what we can do. And this is the one that we hear all the time. We can't do that because we can't be political. Well, I say balderdash to that. We were enormously, brilliantly, effectively political when we eliminated polio from the planet. The empowering belief is that we act and we are nonpartisan. Because frankly, polio would not have been eliminated had we stopped ourselves in our tracks and said we can't be political. And here's another limiting belief that I've been made aware of recently. Rotary is a big umbrella and we value diversity, equity, and inclusion. Therefore, we cannot take a stand against the nuclear weapons because we have Rotarians who believe in nuclear weapons. Well, we also have Rotarians who did not believe in the COVID-19 vaccine, who don't believe in vaccines, period, and who certainly didn't believe in the polio vaccine, but we did it anyway, didn't we? So here's an empowering belief that we could have instead. We respect all points of view because we value diversity, equity, and inclusion, but we function democratically. And when 80, 90, 95% of our members want us to take a stand to eliminate nuclear weapons, we go with the democratic majority. So we need to raise peace consciousness. We need to bring our higher awareness of peace to the rest of the planet. We need to focus on our mutually assured survival. And it's doable. This number one threat to our mutually assured survival, nuclear weapons, disarmament is doable. There's a straightforward solution. We built them, we can dismantle them. 9 countries could end the threat with agreed, controlled, verifiable disarmament. So here's the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. I know that you're already aware of it. I don't need to explain it to you. And here is the resolution that is going forward within Rotary, asking Rotary International Board to endorse the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And 22 here simply means the year 2022. And we are asking for Rotary districts around the world to add their voice to endorse this resolution so that when it goes to the Council on Resolutions, it will carry as much weight as possible. Here are the steps for your district to endorse the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Now, I know some of you will have questions. What is the Council on Resolutions? What is the resolution? What are the steps we need to follow? Well, here they are. And you can just click on each step and learn everything you need to know to make this happen within your district. And we can make this available to you. So when I say there's growing momentum within Rotary at the grassroots level to support the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, I need to also add that there's growing momentum at more senior levels and within Rotary International itself. Our president, Shekhar Mehta, appeared on an international panel last year on eliminating the existential threat of nuclear weapons. Now I ask you, in your Rotarian lifetime, when have you seen another Rotary International president appear on an international panel like this? Rotary is already changing. We are already shifting. We are already recognizing that we need to be more relevant to the issues of today. And Shekhar Mehta said Rotarians should raise awareness about this, and we should encourage our members to get involved so that we can reach our goal of disarmament. And the Rotary Foundation, arguably the most powerful part of Rotary International, came out with a new responsible investment policy last year, which commits, among other things, to avoid investing in companies that are involved with nuclear weapons. Think of that. Rotary International has already taken a stand, whether they recognize it formally, against nuclear weapons. We can be very proud of our Rotary Foundation. I've talked about the support at the grassroots level and the general support among the public at large. Poll after survey says that people around the planet want nuclear weapons removed from the planet. So that brings us to the Council on Resolutions. We know that there is a representative on the council from every district in Rotary. So there are 535 representatives on the council. And when this resolution went forward in 2020, endorsed by one district, 30% of them voted yes. And we know that most of the ones who voted no were held back by that limiting belief, Rotary can't be political, not recognizing that in fact, Rotary has already been political and needs to be nonpartisan. In 2021, the resolution went forward endorsed by 3 districts, 3 times as many districts, and got 45% support, a 50% improvement. And only 24 more districts needed to have voted yes for the resolution to have passed. And last year, they did not know that our president had appeared on an international panel. They did not know that the Rotary Foundation Board had endorsed a new responsible investment policy. They did not know these things. And this year they do. And so this year, the resolution's going forward again, hopefully with the support of as many districts as possible, hopefully with the support of your district. And it's going to lead to a yes vote. We can do this. We can do this. We are called to do this at this moment in time on our planet. And you personally, each and every one of you can help. You can ask your own club and district to endorse the resolution. You can ask the clubs and districts of your neighbors to endorse the resolution. The more endorsements, the greater the impact. Antonio Guterres has asked us for an avalanche of action. And I believe that we can respond to that call in Rotary. What if Rotary could evolve so that we build positive peace and end war, so that we focus on our mutually assured survival, so that we take that first step and endorse the Treaty of the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons? What if? Incoming Rotary International President Jennifer Jones has asked us to imagine. So I ask you to imagine, just imagine. By endorsing the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, Rotary could be the tipping point in shifting our planet to peace. We could be the tipping point. I believe that in every fiber of my being. I hope you do too. Thank you.